Next, I want to create this clearance part for the screw, and we'll also create the nut for the screw. And so let's look at how I would model these components. You should probably try this one on your own before you see how I do it. So I'm going to start a new component, and I will give this the component name screw clearance rivet. And then I'm going to isolate that component. So I'll right click on it, I'll do isolate. That turns everything off. I'm going to go to the right side view, and I will turn on the visibility of that origin, and I'll do a new sketch, continue where I'm at. And then I'm going to draw a center point rectangle at the origin, and let's go ahead and dimension the height of this rectangle as 0.625, and I'm going to dimension the width of this rectangle as 1 inch. I'm going to hide the origin plane. I will then draw a rectangle with the first point at the midpoint of this line, and I'll come up about like that. And then I'll draw a second rectangle from here up about like that. Now I'm going to put some dimensions on here. So I'll dimension the diametral dimensions. So select the center line first, or this line, and then this line. I'll right click and I'll say diameter dimension, and I'll do that as 0.25. And then I'll do the same thing on this one. So I'll select this line first, then this one, right click, diameter dimension, and I'll do this one as 0.75. I will dimension this width as 0.1 and the distance from here over to here as 0.26. My sketch is fully defined. I'm going to do one more piece of geometry. I'm going to draw a circle here, and I'll do that as 0.516. Okay, I will then do an extrusion of this area, and I want to know what this number, or the D number, is for this dimension, and I see that that's D143, and I might give that a name, but I'll just remember that D143. And then I'm going to do extrude, and I'll select this area, and I'll put in that distance D143, and I want to go symmetric total distance. We'll say okay to that. I'll then turn the visibility of that sketch back on again, and I will do revolve this time, and I'm going to revolve this feature and this feature, and I'll revolve it around the y-axis. I want it to join. I'll hide that sketch now. I'll do a fillet on this edge, and for that fillet I'll do 0.03. I'm going to mirror this last feature, or the last two features, to the other side, and so I will do a mirror, and I'll put it on features. I want to mirror the revolve and the fillet, and I want to mirror those about the XZ plane. And so there is our component. We might check the material on this. Now I don't think I've been checking the material on the others, so I'll do physical material, and I see that it's steel. I may want to put a different appearance. So I'll go to that body, and I'll right click and change the appearance, and I'm going to put a chrome appearance on this component, and I'll save that component, or actually we're saving the entire assembly. I want to export this component, so I'm going to do export, and I'm going to call the exported file Acme nut, or maybe just nut. We'll just call it nut. And then I need to save that to the cloud. I'm not going to save it locally in my folder scissors jack, and I'll export that. Let's undo the isolate, so I'll unisolate, and so now I have this component, and it's going to go up into this area right in here. Now I'm trying to decide whether I want to go ahead and put my joints on there, because I'm going to actually put several components here into a subassembly, and so I'm just going to leave this in space right now, and we'll create the other components, we'll build our subassembly, and then we'll join the subassembly. Now I want to bring in the nut for the other end, and so I'll go to the data panel. I'm going to drag this nut in, and I could move it around if I want to, and then I'm going to edit this separately so that it's only within this file. And you see the mistake that I made, and I did this earlier, and let's see if we can just take care of this mistake here. So I accidentally put this nut into a subassembly, into the screw clearance. I'm going to drag this, and I will drop it up here. Now notice, you see this blue line, it looks like you could drop it anywhere along. Go up to the top level, and I'll drop it on the top level, and I'll just continue with where it is now. Okay, so now we see that I've moved it out of that subassembly. I've moved it up to the top level assembly, and then I'm going to break the link on that. So I'm going to break link. It gave me an error that it didn't want to break that link. So I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to redo that one step and see if this takes care of it. So I'm going to break link while it's in the subassembly. So I'll break link. All right, so that broke the link. Now I'll try to drag this up to the top level of the assembly, and so that worked. So we couldn't break the link after it had been moved. We need to break the link before it was moved. All right, I'll make that my active component, and I will then edit this component, and I'll edit that first extrusion. And for the profile, I'm going to control unselect this circle, so I have no hole now in the part. I'm then going to go to the hole command, and I will select this face, and let's look directly at this, and I want to move this hole to the origin, and I'm going to set my distance as through all. I'm going to do a tapped hole, and I'll put it on an Acme screw thread. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch size, and I'll say OK to that. So now I've got a cosmetic thread running through here. I don't have a real thread yet. So I'll go ahead and do a chamfer on this edge. So I'll do chamfer, and I'll also select the edge on the other side of the hole, and let's do that at 0.05. Okay, so I've got a chamfer here and a chamfer here. I'm going to go back to this hole command. Now the reason we had to do it first as cosmetic is we needed that circular edge that we could select for the chamfer. We can't select the edge of a helix because that chamfer will try to run down the helix. So now that I have this, I'll edit that feature, and I'll change this to a modeled thread. So now we see that our modeled thread. Do you see the problem now? If we tried to do chamfer, it would have tried to go down that helical edge. So we had to do it first on a circle and then change it to modeled. Now I would like to put some more clearance here, lead in for that chamfer. So I'm going to edit that chamfer, and I'll change that. Instead of 0.5, let's do 0.075. And so now we see that there's a lead in here. So the chamfer is a little bit bigger than the thread, and we see that there's a lead out over here. We'll say OK to that. All right, so that completes this nut. I'll drag this up here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one in between these components. I'll do joint, capture position. For my first selection, I'll do mid plane between this face and this face. For the snap, I'll select this cylinder. It snaps to the center mid plane. And then for second selection, I'll do mid plane. I'll select this side, and I'll select this side. And then for my snap position, make sure you get the cylindrical face, not this arc, not this arc. Get that cylindrical face. It moves that down into position. I want that to be a revolute, so I'll select revolute. And we see that that has a 1 degree of freedom rotation that we want, and we'll go ahead and say OK to that. Now I see that I have quite a bit of clearance between here and here, more than what I intended, so I may adjust that distance. So let's measure that and see how much distance we have here. So I have between here and here, I have a distance of 110.11. I'm going to add 0.1 on this side and 0.1 on the other side, so a total distance of 0.2. I need to edit the sketch distance, so I'll edit that sketch, and I'll change that distance down here. If I'm going to put 0.2 on here, I need to subtract 0.2 here. So I'll change this to 1.2. I'll change this to 0.2. We'll go back to our model and we'll examine this. And so now I have a little bit of clearance from here to here and clearance over here. I have more clearance than I need from here to here. So let's look and see what that distance is. So I'll measure that from here to, and get a location on this, to here, and that is 0.2, and I thought I changed that to 0.06. Let's check that again. So I'll go back to my sketch, and so I thought I subtracted the 0.2 there. I must have made a mistake on that, so I'll do 0.06, and now we'll check this again. And so that's not enough distance, and so I'm going to undo that. We'll go back to where it was okay, and we'll measure the distance from here to here. So I'll do measure, inspection. So you can use the assembly to modify your parts to get appropriate distances, and I see that's 0.05, and so I think I want to leave 10,000ths of an inch, and so I'm going to subtract 0.04 from that distance. So I'll go back to this sketch, and on that sketch I'll do this as 0.16. Alright, now we'll check our part, and so we should have a little bit of clearance. So we have a little bit of clearance between here and here. We have clearance here and here. We have clearance over here. So we have clearance between all of our components. Now we need to remember to do that to the clearance screw to get the proper distance up here too. So if I had put this part in first, I would have gotten all those corrections before I copied it to this part. I guess we better do this while I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to go to that component and I'll edit that sketch. I will change this 1 inch to 1.2. I will change the distance here, get that at some location, change that to 0.14, and our part should update. And I'm just going to put this by eye in location, and then we'll move it to the precise location here in a few minutes. So I think I got it right, and if I didn't, we can make changes later on to make sure that we get it right.